Hi guys, welcome to Christy's Book Corner. I'm your host Christy Mason, and today we're going to continue with our book, Finding Jacob Wetterling by Robert M. Dudley, and we have two more chapters, chapter 11 and 12, and then we'll be moving on to our next book, and this is chapter 11. Chapter 11, Answers in the Sand. Ooh. I just remembered generally that he was a strange type person, but there was a lot of strange type people around. Al Garber following the arrest of Danny Heinrich. A substantial volume of information was released to the public following the October 2015 arrest of Danny Heinrich, but none of it was new information to investigators. What the world came to know soon after Heinrich's arrest, investigators have known all along. Did subsequently generations of investigators simply forget about Heinrich and the strong circumstantial evidence of his connection to all these crimes? How else could investigators leave him behind as a suspect in favor of Dan Razor or anyone else? How could Heinrich be left free to walk the streets for all these years? It is quite understandable that in 1990 there was not significant evidence to arrest, charge, and convict Danny Heinrich with any of these crimes. Heinrich was one of the several individuals who garnered the attention of the Wetterling Task Force. Former FBI supervisor of the Wetterling investigation, Al Garber, remembered that Heinrich was one of the several suspects in Jacob's abduction case. I just remember generally that he was a strange type person, Garber said, but there were a lot of strange type people around. We watched that guy for weeks, 24/7. Really good surveillance team and techniques in hopes of seeing him do something that would make us believe we could get evidence, and he never did. As for why investigators in 1990 could not bring charges against Heinrich, Garber explained that they simply didn't have significant evidence to do so. It's hard to read this book at the end here. In my whole career, investigating crimes evidence is what counts, Garber said. Whatever else that people see, emotions, logic, common sense, that's good, but it's not evidence. So I'm hoping that this is their first step. They provide other crimes. I'm hoping that they were going to be able to find the evidence that either Heinrich, did it or he didn't do it. Other legal experts weighed in on the fall 2015 developments. Former U.S. Attorney Rachel Paulus appreciated the investigators had never stopped in their pursuit of justice in Jacob's case, but she noted that the tire and shoe prints were not enough to bring charges against Heinrich. You have to prove your case beyond a reasonable doubt to the jury, Paulus said. And those two pieces of evidence, clearly the government decided in its own judgment that there would not be significant proof of crime. But secondly, we have this question of federal jurisdiction. Paulus explained that Heinrich would have taken Jacob Wetterling across state lines to charge him with the kidnapping in the federal court. There were no indications of that happening in court documents. The best evidence, Paulus added, is also a defendant's own incriminating statement or physical evidence, or if a witness comes forward with something Heinrich allegedly said or did that would incriminate him. Even if the government doesn't have significant evidence to convict, they seem to be painting a picture of evidence to connect Mr. Heinrich to Jacob Wetterling's abduction. The October 22nd, 1989 kidnapping case of Jacob Wetterling went viral across the Midwest, the country, and throughout the world. It is a case that has remained on the minds and in the hearts of many, many people ever since. With the widespread and rapid access to instant information that the internet has brought to the modern world, perhaps for future generations will not appreciate the magnitude and depth to which Jacob's story resonated without the aid of the internet. I think people's fascination and horror in this case is it could have happened anywhere, and said Stearns County Attorney Janelle Kendall. It is very stereotypical of this area of the state and really the entire country that if you live in a small town and those sort of things are ongoing, you know where it's safe and you know where it isn't. The people don't jump out of the bushes and take children. They did, and the world is a different place because of that. But for Dan Razer, the newly revealed information about Danny Heinrich could surely spur wonder as to why his own name had ever come up at all. If needed, Stearns County had their fingers on the pulse of what otherwise appeared to have been long forgotten evidence. Razer had been publicly named as a person of interest in Jacob's kidnapping in July 2010, although he had been treated as a suspect by Stearns County for much longer. When federal investigators released detailed information about Danny Heinrich in November 2015, the most alarming evidence that had stood out in Jacob's case was the information about Heinrich's shoe prints and tire prints found in the driveway where Jacob Wetterling was abducted. Jacob's last shoe print was found right next to Heinrich's shoe print and tire print. That information immediately raised questions about how investigators had lost track of Heinrich for so many years. But there was another question, a question about how the disclosure by Kevin Hamilton changed the focus of the Wetterling investigation to abduction on foot rather than by car. Investigators knew that Kevin Hamilton only stopped once in the Razer driveway, at the very end by the paved road where his headlights were pointing toward the bicycles in the ditch. The car Kevin was driving had new tires that had been purchased locally at a Goodyear tire center. The Goodyear store was a company store, meaning it only sold Goodyear brand tires, which at the time many had included Goodyear's subsidiary Dumplot and Kelly tires. The tires on Danny Heinrich's Ford EXP were known to be Sears Superguard tires. Even in the Sears tires on Heinrich's car and the tires available at Goodyear had matched threads, and they may well be a stretch their size would have had to match as well. And it had been established from the very beginning of the investigation that the detail in the tire prints left in the Razer driveway on the night of Jacob's abduction were significant enough to rule out specific vehicles in 1989. For example, the abandoned 1987 red Mercury car that was reported at Lake Rosso in October 1989 was ruled out in the case because its tire treads did not match those left at the scene of Jacob's abduction. For the information from Kevin to lead investigators to negate the tires from Heinrich's car, they would have to have determined the threads from the tires of both cars matched. It should be noted that Kelly Tire did manufacture some models of Sears Superguard tires, so it's reasonable to understand how tires patterns of Heinrich's Ford EXP might possibly be matched to those of the Grand Prix that Kevin was driving. A match of threads between Kevin's tires and Heinrich's tires is possible, but only if Heinrich's Sears Superguard tires had been manufactured by Kelly Tire. There is, however, another significant point about why the tires stand out, and it has to do with the tire size. The 1982 Ford EXP was equipped with tire size at 160/80R13, which matches the tire print size. The most important number is that description is the first number, 165. It is a measurement of tire width in millimeters. Kevin was driving a Pontiac Grand Prix. Although he could not recall with certainty the year of that car or model year of that body style of the Grand Prix he was driving were fitted with the size 195/75/R14 tires. The difference in tire width is 30 millimeters or 1.18 inches, a substantial difference. Absent further explanation from the SCSO, this difference calls into more serious question how Kevin, coming forward in 2003, propelled a change in the theory of Jacob's abduction to abduction on foot. To further the point, the difference in wheelbase, or the distance between the tires between Heinrich's EXP and the Grand Prix, is more than 6 inches. Kevin did not step outside of his car at any time while in the gravel driveway. The detail further calls into question how his presence in the driveway gave investigators reason to eliminate the use of a car in the Jacobs abduction. They knew that the footprints had been found next to Jacob's last known footprints were likely those of his abductor. Investigators had long known a strong link between the tire prints and footprints found at the abduction scene to Daniel James Heinrich. Another question that had yet to be addressed by investigators or the media had to do with the pursuit of Dan Razor as a suspect in Jacob's kidnapping. In light of the fact that investigators had long argued that Jacob's and Jared's cases were related, from the very beginning, investigators consistently reported their beliefs that Jacob's abduction and the abduction and assault of Jared in Cold Spring were related crimes. After Dan Razor was named as a person of interest in the Wetterling case in July 2010, investigators suggest that Razor had been considered in the investigation of all along. Razor has acknowledged publicly that investigators questioned him many times over the years. His first interrogation was at his place of employment the morning after the abduction. He was questioned again the following Saturday as investigators spent 3 years searching his bedroom. Razor, however, had a solid alibi for the night that Jared was assaulted, and he has said that he was never questioned about Jared's sexual assault case. Knowing that investigators had connected the two cases from the beginning, and knowing that Razor was interrogated since immediately after Jacob's kidnapping, why wouldn't investigators have questioned him about Jared's case? If Razor was not considered a top suspect in the beginning, then what was the impetus for investigators to break the sure link between the cases, the sure link they had maintained from the beginning of the investigation? People will likely debate the Wetterling investigation for years to come. They'll focus on the mistakes made by investigators over the years. They'll wonder how Danny Heinrich slipped away from the investigative crosschair for more than 2 decades. Again, it is not difficult to understand that back in 1990, there simply was not enough evidence to charge, try, and convict Danny Heinrich, but there was more than enough information and strong circumstantial evidence to not forget Danny Heinrich, and that's exactly what happened. For all the ups and downs that accompanied the Wetterling investigation over the 26 years leading up to Heinrich's arrest, it turned out there were answers in the sand the entire time. But there was an uncomfortable hurdle in the way of justice in the disappearance of Jacob Wetterling. And it's that blurry divide that lies between knowing and proving. Danny Heinrich's lawyers filed a series of appeals over the summer of 2016. They asked for a change of venue. They all asked for the statement to be dismissed. They asked for the evidence to be dismissed. But as Labor Day weekend quietly approached, Heinrich was ready to talk about what happened on the night of October 22nd, 1989. There was only one thing prosecutors could do to finally get answers. They had to offer the drop-off, but only of the counts of child pornography against Heinrich. And although many among the public would cry foul and say that they had made a deal with the devil, prosecutors also had to grant him immunity from prosecution for the murder of Jacob Wetterling. In exchange, Heinrich would be required to give a detailed confession of what happened to Jacob Wetterling. He would face a maximum of 20 years in prison with an opportunity to get out early on good behavior. Upon release, he would be subject to detention in sex offender treatment facilities. He would probably never again walk the world as a free man. An arrangement was reached between prosecutors and Heinrich, but the Wetterling family would have no sign off on it before a court date could be scheduled, and that's what they did. On September 6, 2016, Heinrich signed the plea agreement in United States District County in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Then, as agreed upon, Heinrich confessed to a courtroom packed full of Wetterling family, friends, supporters, investigators, lawyers, and reporters. It's the end of chapter 11. Tomorrow's the last chapter, chapter 12, and then we'll be going on to next month's book. And I will explain that in the next video. What that is. Fortunately, I don't have the book on me at the moment. It is upstairs. So, if you like the videos, please pop a like. Comment what you liked about the videos. What's your favorite part of the story? You can leave that all in the comments below. If you like our videos, then if you want more, then please subscribe to Christy's Book Corner. And to get notified of when I upload videos, please don't forget to hit the notifications bell. Okay, dare to dream, guys.